Explorer, welcome along to the smartest show in the solar system. Let's search out all those science secrets in our brand new Fun Kids Science Weekly. My name is Dan, and if you've ever wondered why the rainbow stops at 7 colours, we've got the answer this week.
The classic 7, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Sure, if that's what you're looking for, that's what you'll see. But what about greenish yellow? Is that a colour? Is that a mixture of 2 colours? Greenish yellow's in the rainbow.
Also, you can hear about a dangerous beast who's named after one of the most famous game characters ever. And in Battle of the Sciences, we've got a little different one this week, chatting to a science writer about some of the biggest, most wild science stories they've ever covered.
There are zombifying wasps, there are zombifying fungi, there are zombifying worms, there are zombifying flies. So there are all of these different organisms that infect a host, and then they change the host's behavior so that the zombifier can reproduce.
It's all on the way in a brand new Fun Kids Science Weekly. Let's start with your science in the news. And it turns out the world's oldest boomerang doesn't come back. The tool was found in a cave in Poland, and it's older than we previously thought. Experts date it back 40,000 years. It's fashioned from a mammoth's tusk, and scientists say it was probably used for hunting, but because of the shape, it wouldn't have come back, like other boomerangs that we know of. So that's the oldest one that we know so far. And the brilliant thing about science is that we're always discovering something brand new. So watch this space for more old boomerangs. And, thinking about old discoveries, a brand new dinosaur has been found. It's on show at the Natural History Museum in London. It's called Enigma cursor, which means puzzling runner. It was about the size of a Labrador dog. It lived 150 million years ago, scuttling around the feet of huge giants like Stegosaurus. Now, originally, experts thought that it was a nanosaur. So part of a species that already exists that we know of, but they've now decided that it's from an entirely new species, the Enigma cursor. It's tiny. I've been lucky enough to go and see the fossil on show at the Natural History Museum, and how wonderfully fine the bones are. It's really surprising how small it is and how much damage it still could do. And how mind-blowing is it that 150 million years later, we're still discovering brand new dinosaurs. And our final story this week, waters around the UK could see a boom in endangered shark, rays, and even native oysters as species move habitats as the oceans get warmer. Researchers at the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science have mapped how 19 threatened marine species could respond to climate change. Let's find out more with Dr. John Pinnegar, who is from the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science. John, thank you for being there. Now, it's a double-edged sword, it sounds like, because while it's interesting and maybe exciting that we're getting these species in our oceans, it shows how much our warming ocean is affecting things, doesn't it?
It does, and pretty much all the species that we've looked at are going to move their distributions, except that some of them we're probably going to see it's going to get better for, and others it's going to get worse for.
How on earth do we know what creatures, what sharks and rays down in the ocean that live some way away, what they might be doing in the next few years? How have you been tracking that?
So what we've been doing is we've tried to use some models where we look at the future temperature, but where we start with is we take people's observations of where they've seen the species at the moment, and sometimes that's from normal members of the public that they report their sightings to all sorts of citizen science websites. So there's one called iNaturalist, for example, that we use, and because we know where the species are now, we can see the temperatures at the places where those species live now, and we can project those temperatures into the future and try and see where the species will move in the future.
Oh, are we expecting to have more exotic animals from oceans that are quite far away right now?
Yeah, so the ones that we looked at are the 19 species are all things that are already here. Some of them are only here in small numbers at the moment. And some of them are sort of we're in their main sort of part of their distribution. But things like basking shark, they're already here. They're mostly found on the west of the UK, but we think that they're going to shift northwards, and we'll perhaps even see them in the northern parts of the North Sea. Also, some of the small sharks like spur dog. But the opposite of that is at the southern end of their range. So, for example, off Cornwall and the south of England, some of those species might lose habitat. It becomes too warm. But then we might get strange things coming in from that aren't even here yet. So I have a student who's looking at things like smooth hammerhead shark, and we might start to see things like those arriving for the first time.
So what does this mean if for creatures coming here, and maybe creatures in the south of the UK that are moving north, what does it mean for the local ecosystems where these animals might end up, the creatures that are already there?
So some of those particularly that we think it's going to get harder for. So things like pink sea fan, but also there's this crazy clam that it's called an ocean quahog. It lives in the north of the North Sea. It's the oldest living animal on the planet. It can live for well over 500 years. Some of those are going to really struggle in the future, and they form habitat for other species. Similarly, sand eels are a species where in some areas of the UK we're expecting them to decline, and in other areas are expecting them to expand. And where they disappear, they could be important for seabirds and mammals and things like that.
Now, there's a huge focus on doing all we can to reverse some of the impacts of the climate crisis and to bring down our temperature, at least not see it rise as much as it is. How does that work in the ocean? Are we too far gone to really change anything, and these creatures will move now?
A certain amount of change is already kind of locked in. And so, at least for the foreseeable future, we will see species moving around, and it's happening all around the planet. So in the Northern Hemisphere, species typically shift northwards towards the pole. And in the Southern Hemisphere, around Australia, things typically go southwards. And so we will see some of that. As I said, the more mobile species like sharks will probably move quicker than things on the seabed. But some of the things you can do is, if you know that some areas are going to become more difficult for species, is you can protect them and remove other pressures, so intensive fishing pressure or pollution. And so by removing those other pressures, you can build some resilience in the population to allow them to sort of hang on into the future.
Well, it's been a pleasure to chat and to find out more about our changing oceans with you. Dr. John Pinnegar, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much to John Pinnegar for coming on the show, talking about how our warm oceans are bringing more unique creatures around the UK. Let's get to your questions then. If there is anything sciencey that you really want answered, something you're desperate to discover, make sure you leave it as a voice note and a message for me on the free Fun Kids app or at funkidslive.com, and then I will do the digging for you. First up this week, this is from Etta, who wants to know, why do we need food? Well, we need food for lots of different reasons, Etta. It makes our bodies function properly. That's number one. That kind of covers everything. As food makes its way into your stomach and then around your digestive system, your intestines will absorb all of the nutrients, the vitamins, the calories that you need to, well, go about day-to-day life healthily. The big reason is that food supplies calories, fuel. Your body then converts those calories into energy, which powers everything that you do, to breathing, to exercising, even thinking. Thinking takes up a surprising amount of calories. And it's amazing, with something that's like requires a lot of mind power, maybe playing chess, you'd be shocked to discover how many calories playing chess and concentrating really hard, how much that burns. Now, nutrients in your food as well, like proteins, they help build and repair muscles, organs, all the cells around your body. Vitamins in the food too, they keep your immune system working to defend against intruders. They help control important processes in your body, like making hormones and chemicals and keeping your nerves working. Also, there are other things in food that keep you healthy, like antioxidants. You might have heard that before. It's quite like a superfood. We talk about antioxidants. Well, they protect your cells from damage and they keep you fit for years ahead. So food helps power every single part of your body. Without it, you'd get tired, you'd get weak, and then much worse stuff would happen, Etta. So that's why we need food, to keep you powered and to help you function properly. Thank you for your question. Let's get on another one then. This is a voice note sent in by Marcus. What do you have?
Hi, I am Marcus. Why does rainbow have 7 colors?
Well, Marcus, thank you so much for your question. Why does the rainbow have 7 colours? And is there ever an end to a rainbow? Shall we unpack everything with Dr. Richard Bowman from the University of Glasgow, who joins us? Richard, thank you for being there. Let's get straight to it. Why does a rainbow only have 7 colours?
Well, I would say actually a rainbow has many more than 7 colours. It's just that usually we only give names to 7 of them.
Whoa! What an absolute bombshell to drop straight away. But when I look at a rainbow, I can only see 7.
Well, I mean, the classic 7, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Sure, if that's what you're looking for, that's what you'll see. But what about greenish yellow? Is that a colour? Is that a mixture of 2 colours? Greenish yellow's in the rainbow. A rainbow is a continuous spectrum of different colours. In physics, we would use the wavelength of the light to really kind of scientifically define what you would normally think of as its colour. And that's a continuous scale. So there's no hard boundary between what's red and what's yellow and what's orange. There's a smooth scale of wavelength. And how we chop that up is kind of arbitrary.
So we've worked out that there are many, many colours in a rainbow, all the ones in the spectrum, I think. Why do they appear in the air, though? They're always in a uniform, almost arc. On a rainy day when there's a touch of sun in the sky, what's happening?
Well, to get a rainbow, you need 2 ingredients. You need sunlight and you need rain. Or more specifically, you need water droplets in the air. So actually, that kind of really fine, misty rain is particularly good. And what happens to make a rainbow is that the sunlight hits a droplet of water, this little ball, and the light gets bent as it enters the ball of water. That we call refraction. And it bounces around inside the droplet. That we call total internal reflection. And then it comes out again and gets bent again as it leaves the droplet. If all of the colours of light did this in the same way, a rainbow wouldn't be a rainbow at all. It would be a white circle. But the light gets bent by a slightly different amount depending on its wavelength, depending on its colour. So red light gets bent slightly less than blue light. And it turns out that effect is what spreads the rainbow out. So the radius of that arc is bigger for the red light. That's why the red light appears at the outside. What's
really fascinating, Richard, is that the sunlight that's normally behind us hits the water vapour, the rain, whatever it is, and there can be a lot of it there. Yet when it enters the little droplets and it's bouncing around, it kind of always comes out in a pretty constant arc. Do we know why light travels in this way? No matter where it's hitting the water vapour, it will still make that circle with all the different colours.
The angle that I'm looking at affects the colour that I see. So the rainbow doesn't actually exist anywhere in normal space in the way you'd think of it. The rainbow can be thought of as coming from the whole rain cloud. It's just that depending on the angle you're looking at it, you see a different colour. And that's why, if, for example, you're sitting in an aeroplane, the rainbow appears to move as you move. It's not attached to the cloud, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, we've had so many, bombshells there. That rainbows actually have loads of colours in them and that they're not really there. Well, Marcus, I hope that sorted out your question. Dr. Richard Bowman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you to Richard Bowman for helping us understand about all the different colours in a rainbow and how there are way more than we normally think. If you ever have anything sciencey that you want answered on the show, make sure you leave it as a voice note for me on the free Fun Kids app. You can do it too at funkidslive.com. Now, it's a very important weekend. If you're listening on Saturday when this has first come out, it's the start of our Summer of Science. The very first Fun Kids Science Weekly live show is happening on Sunday the 6th of July in Sheffield at the Crossed Wires Festival. So if you're nearby, if you're looking for something to do, come along. I will be there with something from outer space. An actual meteorite on stage, you can touch it. Everything that you love about this podcast will be there in a stage show. We'll have genius guests, Magna Science, they'll be there with explosive, slimy experiments. We'll also have Zoo Lab coming along, bringing some deadly beasts. And I love my Dangerous Dan, right? So I'm very excited for those. You can come along Sunday at the 6th of July at Crosswise Festival in Sheffield in the UK. If you missed that, I'm on tour for the rest of the summer as well, bringing Fun Kids Science Weekly live to towns and cities all around the UK with everything that you love about the podcast live on stage. Find out where I'm coming near you and get your tickets. Grab a grown-up, head to funkidslive.com/tour. For this week's Dangerous Dan, where we try and search out the most weird, unique, strange, and often deadly things in the universe, we're headed to the wilds of South America to take a look at Ceratophorus, whose other name might instantly help you picture what they look like. They're known as the Pacman Frog. This beast is named in honour of Pac-Man, the classic video game character. You know, the little yellow ball that eats loads of dots, runs away from ghosts? Well, this frog is named after that because it has an enormous mouth. Now, the frog is normally green or brown with red splodges across its body. You might notice little horns that stick out above their eyes. But you won't be able to take your eyes away from their enormous mouth. They've got these huge round holes that take up most of their body. Now, the frog itself grows to just a few inches long. They would fit in your hand. They spend most of time underground, burrowing in the mud, waiting. They're an ambush predator. Just their eyes stick out to see what's happening around them, if there's any prey nearby. And the prey that they go after, well, it could be anything. They've got huge appetites. They'll jump out to feast. And they fit so much in their gob, if they can squash it in there, they will. They swallow things half their size. Insects, rodents, birds, lizards, even other frogs. Now, it has some trouble, because sometimes its teeth gets in the way. If it eats something too big, it can end up, stuffing itself silly, really. But this beast, with its massive mouth, named after one of the most famous game characters ever, such a brilliant name too. It means the Pacman Frog goes straight onto our Dangerous Dan list. It's time for Battle of the Sciences, where we try once and for all to discover the greatest science in the history of the universe. This week, we are talking to a science writer, someone who has covered all different forms of fields and expertise, and they will tell us their favourite of them all. Mindy Weisberger joins us to discuss animal behaviour and why it's the greatest. And they've written about them all, so maybe they know. Let's find out. Mindy, you have 1 minute to tell us why animal behaviour is the greatest of all science. That minute starts in 3, 2, 1, go!
Well, when it comes to the sciences, I think animal behavior stands out for so many reasons. The first one is because, to a certain extent, anyone can do it. There's something really accessible about animal behavior, because if you have animals in your home, or if you live someplace where you can go out and see animals, you can observe animal behavior. And this is something that's been a part of scientific study of animals pretty much as long as there have been people writing scientific papers about animals. And there's just so much to observe. You can look at the way that individuals behave, how they get food, how they reproduce, how they defend themselves, how they hunt. You can look at how social groups behave. You can look at how, like ants or termites or any kind of animal that lives in a group is going to have specific behaviors that affect not just how it survives, but how the entire group survives. And you can look at parental care.
Mindy, that's your minute done, and it's expanded to us so many questions. And I know that you must have written about so many different types of animals and their unique behaviour. Tell us about some of the really unique ways that animals go about their lives that really excite your interests.
Well, I'm especially interested in parasites, and there are certain types of parasites that actually manipulate the behavior of their hosts. They change the way their hosts behave. And in fact, I wrote a whole book about this called Rise of the Zombie Bugs. And I've written about different types of these zombifying parasites before, but when I started researching the book, I discovered just how many different types of these parasites there are, and that totally blew my mind. There are zombifying wasps, there are zombifying fungi, there are zombifying worms, there are zombifying flies. So there are all of these different organisms that infect a host, and then they change the host's behavior so that the zombifier can reproduce.
When you are thinking of a new part of science to write about, perhaps that's animal behaviour, or maybe even something different. What initially sparks your interest about it? And then how do you go about learning everything that you need to write?
Well, I come to science as someone who does not have a science background. I actually went to film school. I came into science as a media producer, a filmmaker, and a writer. And so when I'm looking at any kind of science, I have so many questions about it because so much of it is new to me. And I kind of use that as a guide for what stories I want to tell and how I tell them, because I figure that if me, someone who's not a scientist, has these big obvious questions that I want to ask and have answered, then other people probably want to have them answered too.
And just moving back to zombies and zombie bugs. I mean, we've spoken about this on the podcast before in different types, but they are just also amazing. How on earth are you researching these without perhaps getting too close?
Well, for one of the types of zombies, I actually was able to get close. There's a type of fungus that zombifies periodical cicadas. Now, I know you don't have these in the UK. These are insects that are specific to North America. So cicadas are found worldwide, but in North America, there is a type of cicada that emerges only once every 13 or 17 years. So very, very long life cycle for an insect. And there's a specific type of fungus that only infects these types of periodical cicadas. So these cicadas, they're very dramatic looking. They have black bodies, bright red eyes, orange veins on their wings. And what the fungus does is, once it infects the cicada, it multiplies inside their body and then basically makes their butts drop off and replaces their butts with this plug of fungal spores. And then what happens is when these cicadas mate, they spread the fungal infection and spread the spores around. So this helps the fungus to reproduce. So the fungus is actually changing it's not only changing the bodies of these cicadas, it changes their behavior. It makes them seek out more mates so that they'll spread the fungus even wider. And I actually was able to see this in person in New Jersey a few years ago when the brood 10 periodical cicadas emerged. I went to this field where there were going to be a lot of these cicadas, and I actually found one that had the big yellow spore butt. So that was really exciting. But that's an exception. For the most part, I find out about all these different zombies and zombifiers by talking to scientists, by looking at the videos and the photos that these scientists have done of their work in the lab in the field, and reading all the papers that they've written about the stuff that they've seen.
Wow, it's been a real joy to chat about everything you've learned and the expertise, the really how much you love animal behaviour. Mindy Weisberger, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's dive into the ocean then, to finish off this week with Marina Ventura and her ocean adventure. We're finding out how oceans benefit us because the seas are very important for all humans and creatures. So let's check in with Marina in her ocean adventures.
Marina Ventura's Ocean Adventure, supported by the Natural Environment Research Council, the science of the natural world.
Yasu, adventurers! That's Greek for hello! I'm having a bit of a rest today, swimming in the warm Aegean Sea around the Greek islands. It's beautifully blue and warm, perfect for relaxing. Seas aren't just good fun, they're mega super important in loads of ways for humans like us, even when we just take a breath of air. Phytoplankton in the water provides half of the oxygen that we breathe, and in the future, biofuel from seaweed could run our cars and heat our houses. Clever, huh? I'm going to dry off and have a sunbathe on the beach. Phew! And as well as that, the sea provides a whole toolkit for scientists. Here we have some amazing anemones. They're handy too. One called the bubble tip anemone produces a protein that can be used to colour in other microscopic samples. Not quite like felt tip pens. The bubble tip produces a brilliant red colour under fluorescent light, and other proteins from other forms of sea life provide other colours. All these colours help scientists see the different parts of specimens when they're looking at them under the microscope. It's even thought we could find a cure for many diseases from the ocean, even the common cold. Bless you. Sea life might not sneeze, but viruses affect all forms of life. One tiny algae can defend itself brilliantly against viral attack by performing a magic trick. If it is attacked by viruses, the algae responds by completely changing its physical appearance, making it impenetrable to the deadly virus. It's called the Cheshire Cat algae because it can change so quickly and the virus just doesn't recognise it anymore. Imagine if we could do that. Let's find out what other treasure can be found in the sea with Map app, the electronic essential for every explorer. It's in my rucksack. Hang on. Oh, that's not it. I thought I'd packed it near the top. My lovely pink wellies, but I won't be needing them today. Ah, here it is.
Hello. Gosh, it's hot in here. You want a fact about cooling down?
Not today. We're finding out how the oceans benefit us.
Ah, well, I've got the perfect fact for that. A way of taking stock of the treasures in the ocean is by bioprospecting, collecting and analysing samples. And one scientist who's at the forefront of bioprospecting is Craig Venter. His yacht Sorcerer 2 is rather like an environmentally friendly floating laboratory, big enough to cross oceans and manoeuvrable enough to go wherever it's needed to collect samples. Once, during a short stay around Bermuda, more than 1.2 million new genes and more than 1,800 species of microbes were identified, including 148 previously unknown bacteria.
Amazing! That's all we have time for today, but join us soon for more mysteries from the deep. Doodle pip, adventurers!
Marina Ventura's Ocean Adventure, a Fun Kids production in association with the Natural Environment Research Council, the science of the natural world.
You can hear more from Marina wherever you're listening to this show. Just search Marina Ventura. You've got it Google, Apple, Spotify. It's everywhere. It's on the free Fun Kids app too and at funkidslive.com. Now, this weekend is the start of our Summer of Science. I'm playing at the Crosswires Festival on Sunday the 6th of July with Fun Kids Science Weekly Live. If you miss that, don't worry, plenty of chances over the next couple of months. I'm taking it on tour all around the UK. Find out where it's headed near you at funkidslive.com/tour. If you've got a question, I'd love to hear it. Send it as a voice note on the free Fun Kids app and at funkidslive.com. And Fun Kids, we are a children's radio station from the UK. Listen all over the country on our app, on the website, and if you've got a smart speaker, wake it up and ask it to play Fun Kids.